It's also about the history of Honey Grove. The interview took place sitting in his car on the parking lot in front of the station wagon. Unfortunately, the windows were down. There was a very strong breeze, and you'll hear background noise throughout the entire tape, which I regret, caused by the wind. The sensitivity of the microphones and the wind is the reason for all this background noise. So listen now to Mac Eversole. Very, very unusual tape by a man who has a phenomenal memory. I was trying to get a little information on some of the old schools here in Honey Grove.
Well, I remember when I was a kid, we used to go by there before they tore it down and they built the high school, in 1912 up there.
Yeah.
And tore the old building down, and the dormitory was on the west side there.
Yeah. Was it close to across from Allen's or where?
Right east of Allen's.
Yeah.
Big two-story building, and well, I knew the Wall boys around here. They were very athletic people. Was Mr. Wall Methodist minister, or it was a Methodist school, as I remember. Because in the deeds, when we were gonna, L.C. Hill wanted to buy the old high school up there. We talked about building a new grade school, and they dug out the old deeds, and the Methodists had established that Wall School up there, and according to the deeds, it was supposed to be used for a white school only. And they decided then, the school board did, in order to keep the school where it was and make it handy on everybody, because the children all didn't have automobiles then.
Yeah.
And it would make it a whole lot better. And so they didn't sell it to Mr. Hill. He was going to build a rest home out of it. That's what he wanted.
Yeah.
But this dormitory over there on the west side there, across on east of Mr. Allen's place, we had been after Mr. E. Blocker was one of the city commissioners at that time, and we just had the France fire truck. And we were having a hard time with, didn't have anything else to have some extra hose. When you tied the truck up to a plug, you had it tied there. And tried to get Mr. Blocker to endorse buying a Dodge truck, just to make a hose wagon out of it. He wasn't much in favor of it. One night that old building caught a fire, because he lived down there on the next block. He come up there, and Bill Reed was fire chief at that time. Mr. Blocker was like a lot of folks. He just want to pitch in and help you, but he was in the way, and some of the boys gave him a hell of a good win. And he decided that night that we needed that truck, so the next day they bought it. Well, they had to order it. I don't remember who got a Dodge Grand truck, they called it then. So anyhow,
was that when the Wall School caught on fire?
Oh, no, that was
some other fire.
The dormitory.
Oh, yeah.
That is after they'd already built the high school, and the old dormitory was sitting there. And
that dormitory was a wood frame building.
Oh yeah, it was a wood frame building. It was 2 stories, and I don't know, it would be like, it covered nearly that west half of that block. Way back.
Pretty good size.
Yeah, pretty good size building.
And did Mr. Wall have his residence on that same block?
Yeah, as I understood it, that they lived there. Yeah.
Must have been. Did they live in a dormitory or separate residence?
No, it was all one building, so
they lived in it too.
Yeah, as well as I remember.
About when do you reckon they shut down teaching in that school? When they built the high school building there?
No, it was vacant before then, as well as I remember, because we used to walk up the street there to by the old building. I don't know what they did with the brick when they tore it down. They could have used it. Mr. Finn built the high school at that time, and he could have used it in the building. I don't know.
The Wall School itself was a brick building, or wasn't it?
Oh yeah,
Was it two-story or one-story?
Yeah, two-story building. Two-story building.
How many rooms you reckon was in it?
I don't have any idea.
Really wasn't a very large building, was it?
Well, I don't know. When I was a kid, it looked pretty big.
It looked big to you.
Yeah.
Could have been pretty good size. I was curious about the fire department. Do you know when the fire department was, as we have it now, when it was organized?
I had one piece here, 1896, I believe you said, and I reckon that where that part of it was 1896 or not.
Yeah, this part of it was also 1896 in the paper.
Well, I had a contract that the city made with some fire people that made fire equipment, and they bought this a horse-drawn hose wagon, and they bought this old Selby, I believe his name's Selby, pumper, and I had the contract, and I kept it for years, and I carried it up there at the signal office one time. Joe Marr was going to print something about it. And of course, the thing burned out later on. I don't know what ever come of it, but anyhow, how come you say that? Uncle Hen Smith was the mayor at that time, because he was the one that signed it.
Yeah.
And L.C. Hill was in the fire company for years. I remember on this contract was J.H. Smith and L.C. Hill. Now there's one of these others was on the contract.
So it must have been the commissioners that went in office in 1896, in April of 17.
It could have been. We always, I'd look it up back there, some of the old records, but 1898 was when they first figured the real organization was going, but they had a bucket brigade there before they ever had that old hose reel.
Of course, I'm sure they had the bucket brigades even back in the Civil War days or prior to that. Because, you know, you had to have, that's the only thing you had.
I've got an old fire ledger that they had in 19, well, I believe the first of it was 1903. They evidently had a new book because I've got all the names of the members of the company at that time. And I know my daddy was a member of the fire company for years, and we lived out here across the
You got that ledger at your house?
Yeah. And it's because he he belonged to the fire company, and when they rang the fire bell at night, he'd run out there and jump on a little old pony we had and come to this fire all the time for years when I was a kid. But Mr. Lawrence Hill, he was a real progressive man. He believed in doing things, and he'd get after it now, and he did a lot of good promoting around because he believed in all this, promoting the town.
Yeah. Well, back at the times you're talking about, there was a bunch of people that was pretty good to get after as well.
Oh, yeah. There was well, I don't know, this old ledger runs on up to, I don't know how many years, and then when I got in, later on, we run out of a ledger, and we the back part of this old ledger and started us a record in the thing, and I've got the record in it up until, I think, about 33, 4, 5.
What all was in the ledger? Just the members'
yeah,
names?
Yeah, the members'
names. Have
names.
a ledger of meetings and
Yeah,
so forth, had all that?
the ledger of the meetings, and I know Hops VK was fire chief here for a long, long time, and Charlie VK belonged, and John VK, you know, you remember John, I guess.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
He come down here and stayed then till he died, practically till he died. Drove the horses. Well, he never had driven any motor equipment at all till they bought that LaFrance truck, and he drove it.
He had to learn how to drive then, didn't he?
Well, yeah, but that wasn't too much trouble for him. I know Grant Setter had to make him head about that big, so he
sit up high
behind up, in the seat.
Boy, that LaFrance was some fire truck when it came out, wasn't it? What year was that? Was that 1924 or?
No, I got it in 21.
21.
Hello, Mr. Calvin Trout was mayor at that time. You know, he never did believe in spending too much money. And he gave $10,500 for it, and everybody thought he's crazy, but he had figured it out that the insurance, save it on the insurance premiums on the town, which
Have that pumper.
yeah, have that pumper, because and that's the reason they have to discard that old France. And that Ford truck we had, well, on account of the insurance rate, and that's what I told Hofflucker when he was talking about buying a fire truck. I said, well, if you get a 750-gallon pumper, all their insurance required was 500 gallons a minute, and I said, you always got to stand by, because this old France was a 600-gallon pumper. It had always come up past the standard.
Yeah. Well, you remember the old, you remember the steam engine truck, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me something about that.
Well, they kept it in that, where they got the police sheriff office there then. There's a cellar under that building. And
Cellar under the city hall.
no, it's under that. It don't go under the
Under that part of the building.
That part of the building. And they pulled the ashes out back there. They kept a fast burning coal and shavings and coal oil cobs, and when the alarm came in, whoever stayed there, he just touched that thing off, and you had steam up the time you got to town. Of course, in the early days, though, Bob Brown, I don't remember, I guess you remember, but he promoted a picture show around here for years. And he was always an industrious fella. He ran well, I believe you had a picture of the old Bob Brown liver table down there,
right.
Chevrolet house is. Well, he was a member of the company, and he kept a pair of horses hitched up all the time, and they gave so much feast, the first one down here, to pull that steamer out, and he was always first, because he had his horses already hitched. And later on, they finally decided they'd buy some horses. And well, they kept a pumper down there in my day, and it sat around there, it was always in the way, and Walter Vollmer and some of the folks that had stock in that Emmons Lake down there at Sash, you know, it is west of the highway down now.
Yeah.
They wanted to drain that thing, and why they didn't cut the dam over there and let the water out, they was going to get the fish out, restock it. So they talked the city and the ocean, taking that old steamer down there, and they run it about 3 weeks down there, pumping that water out of that lake. When they got all the water pumped out, there wasn't no fish in it hardly anyhow.
Yeah.
But it run it so long, it wasn't. Well, it's going to take a lot of work to do, and of course, modern machinery had come along. Why, they gave it to the fire department, and so we decided that was when you can sell this junk pretty high. It had lots of brass on it, so and nickel. So we just junked it and sold it. We've always been sorry ever since.
Cried about it ever since.
It was a relic, sure enough. The old Snag Stewart, they called him, run the old Stewart gin down there across from the compress. Why, old man Bill Stewart was the manager of the gin. Snag had been a member of the fire company, and he knew how to operate that boiler, and he's the one that ran it down there at the lake when they was pumping all that water. So they ran it night and day, fired it with coal, had a good whistle on it, and made lots of fuss, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I think somebody had a picture here in town of the old steamer with a couple of gray horses hooked to it. Now, I don't remember who it was. I know Frank George used to pull it around some. Will Graves used to have a couple of gray horses.
Will Graves, is that
Miss Josie Graves' husband.
Yeah, okay.
He was a Texaco agent here and had the bottling works down on South 6th there. Yeah. I know he had a gasoline pump out there in front of that place, and one of them old 1-gallon Chetron pumps. And my daddy collected for Williamson spells, and times was getting a little faster, and they'd built a few gravel roads. Why, Mr. Williamson said, well, it just takes too long to get around in a buggy. So he bought him a brush. And, well, you've seen them, I guess.
Yeah, in museums.
Yeah, well, there was a bunch of them around here. And he bought my daddy one of those things, just one-cylinder gasoline engine on a kind of a buggy deal. Chain drive. And we got a gas down there. I know my daddy let me drive that thing. That's the first car I ever drove.
About what year were you reckon that was?
It was 1911.
Who'd he buy the thing from?
He bought it second-hand from somebody.
Oh, you don't. Did they have a dealer here that sold those brushes? I know Mr. Graves sold some kind of car.
Well, he had Overlands down there for a long time because they went to Pontiac, Michigan, and got those and broke him. When they got back with them, the price had gone down, and they nearly wore them all out, bringing them back. No, this old brush, well, we kept it a long time. We kept it out at our house, but anyhow, Mr. Williamson went out with my daddy to Self's one day on a collecting tour. Come up a rainstorm, thing run out of water, and they both got wringing wet. So T-models had come along pretty good, so he bought him a T-model Ford then. Oh boy. Now those boys, Mr. Harrison Bolden, I don't reckon you ever knew him, but he was a tailor shop man around here, and car dealer, and first one thing another for Graves, and he carried a bunch to Pontiac, Michigan, and got those.
About what year was that? That's still about 1911?
No, that is in... It must have been about 1914 or 15, because it got to where the war had started over there in Europe, and got to where you couldn't get cars at all, and everybody was beginning to make a little better crop, and they started building gravel roads around here about 1914. And he thought, well, if he could have got them back in time, he'd have made some money, but time he got them back, they had them nearly wore out. But they sold them around here pretty well. Say it, because they had to take a big discount on them. I know George Monier out here east of town, Fred Monier's daddy got one of them, and Newt Self bought one of them. And, well, he got rid of all of them, one way or another.
How many livery stables did we have here? You talking about Bob Brown's livery stable. Who else had them?
Mr. Bill Lane,
Now, where was his?
he had one over yonder where that Phillips 66 station is there.
Yeah. Now, Bill Lane, who's he the father of? See, what connection? He was Sam Lane. Bob Lane, ain't he?
Yeah. I really don't know, but he lived down there where T.G.'s wife lives now,
I
then.
see.
And
Well,
he,
there must have been some connection.
yeah, and then later, he had a,
How big a stable was that down there?
it run back there. Well,
Pretty good size.
yeah, yeah.
Well, now, was the ghost wagon yard still going?
Oh,
It
yeah,
was there.
yeah, it was there after all these others.
All right, now, was there any more down there where the ghost wagon yard was? Is it the only one in that area, or
Yeah.
was there others? Or were
Well,
there others?
that was the only one in that area because Ghost and Bratton had this place on 6th Street too, you know, down there where Alexander or some of them owned that,
Yeah.
had that lumberyard.
Was that all a part of the same wagon yard then? Well, I thought maybe that was separate, two different wagon yards.
Ghost and Bratton were in partners in the
Yeah.
mule business together, and then they had that big place over there where Junior Ghost has got all fenced in.
Yeah.
And Ollie Lancaster then, he was a mule dealer, little after that time.
About what time are we talking about there?
Ghost and Bratton was in business down there as long as I can remember. I don't know what I mean,
When you born, Mike?
December 26, 1902.
1902.
Practically 23, but Mr. Steve Ghost bought this. He came from Missouri to start with, and he always went back up there in his home country and bought those good mules. They shipped them to Hugo and then drove them across the country to Hunter Grove.
How many would they bring in at a time?
Well, let's see. I don't know how many they got in the car. I don't know where it's 25 or 30, but anyhow, they generally got 2 carloads of mules. And Henry Dixon and Frank Ghost, and he had several that go over. Well, you could go from here to Paris on the train and get on to Frisco and go to Hugo, and then they'd turn those mules loose up there and come across the country, swim across the river. I know I had an uncle that...
Saving money that way, I guess.
And I had an uncle that one of my daddy's sisters lived down at Cavendish, and he was a kind of a mule dealer and so on, and they always come by there if it's late while they leave their mules there at his place overnight.
You remember about the Rabbit Park, don't you?
Yeah. That is one of the biggest things that happened in Honey Grove on the 4th of July. Mr. Bill Irvin owned that 26 acres. He was in that place out there.
All right, now tell me exactly, is the present football field a part of it, or it was south of there?
It's east and south.
East and south both. South
You know
far
where
how far
John Dixon's got his, Rick and Clary owned that place out there?
Yeah.
Well, that's it. Just out of the rest home.
Yeah, okay.
Well, it's just, where Charlie Young built that brick house, well,
Yeah.
it's on west of that.
About west of that.
It joined the highway out here and then went on back north.
And it probably came back west. Does it come back as far back as where the railroad used to cross?
Well, part of it did, because the Santa Fe had a track back up there.
Yeah.
In that pasture, back of Lankford pasture, we call it,
Yeah.
and back where the school owns the property now.
Yeah.
And the Irvins, Mr. Irvin, them own that southeast part of where the football parking lot is now. And there's a street that goes through between that old Compton house up there and the school property. This alley is 26 feet wide.
I remember that alley. Was that at one time a street?
Well, that's Mr. Irvin's. It was his property, but it went to his rabbit catch pen back up there. He had a rabbit catch pen up there and just joined the southeast corner of where the football field is now. And that's where the rabbits all run to.
Yeah.
But then he had a bleacher. Well, he had a grandstand. It wasn't bleachers. He had a grandstand out there. It looked like, I believe it seated about 1,500 people. And on the 4th of July, well, Harry Thompson and a bunch of the firemen and all, they always had a big parade here. And I think you've seen some of the pictures where the fire department and Harry is standing on the back of one of the fire wagons. And,
well, I don't think I've seen that.
Well, it is in the Centennial book.
Yeah, okay.
And anyhow, the fire department had a baseball team, and some of the rest of the merchants here in town, and they always played on the 4th of July, and then the Honey Grove had a couple of baseball teams. White team and the nigger team. Both Jesse and Edwin Walker used to play on the nigger team all the time. And they played out there. Then they had that rabbit track too. They had rabbit races all the time called Mr. Irvin and Mr. Julian Irvin and Deacon Schreiber and some of these others around there. You've heard about the dog races they had and so on. They raised these good greyhounds.
Yeah.
And that's what had that park in. But Mr. Bill Irvin, he was a believer in promoting things going on. And they had a good baseball team here. Old Pat Krause and all, you've heard of him, and Ray Irvin's uncle. And A.C. Krause and Red Hodge. And a lot of them were baseball players.
John Turner was talking to him this morning at the drugstore, and he said that I'd ask him to think about baseball since he used to play and tell me something about baseball. And this morning he was telling me a tale about the baseball team here at one time having a game with a female team called the Boston Bloomers women team, and the women beat the men.
I've heard about the Boston Bloomers, and I don't remember anything about it, but I knew they had come here at one time, but I'm sure that's where they played out there.
Yeah, they must have.
Because they had a good baseball field out there, sure enough, dandy. And, of course, it didn't have any highway, but there's a road from here to Petty, and you could get in there easy.
Yeah. You say there's 25 acres in that park out there? 26 acres in that park.
Well, that included that strip,
Okay.
I think, in the whole thing, because Henry Stroud, John Jones bought it from McCaskey and was going to build a housing unit, you remember?
Yeah.
And they built them that block house out here on the highway where they had.
I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah. And Henry Stroud bought it off of John Jones, seemed me like, or John Jones bought it off. I know they moved softball fields from down here out there, if you remember, back down there. Well, John Jones bought that land, and he decided that softball field, they didn't have that alley fence. And then, of course, they moved over part of the bases, and he went out there and gave him a pretty good fit about it being on his property. So the school then, they got their line surveyed off out there and put the fence up and left the alley still there.
Yeah.
But
And don't do anybody any good.
No, don't do anybody any good, but Mr. Irvin had given the school that what he had on, I don't know how many acres, they didn't know exactly, in the southeast part there, just for parking.
Yeah.
Because Mary Helen come back here one time, and she was looking over that stuff up, and she thought the school loaded for it. Mr. Irvin had just made out a deed to the school for whatever that water was for, and it just fenced it that time. Never had caused any more trouble on it.
What sort of sidewalls did the Rabbit Park have? Can you remember?
Well, no, I can't.
Well, I'll tell you what George Compton told me. I thought this was interesting. They must have had cables or wires tied up on posts, and they had bagging for cotton bagging, and they had it on the side for the sidewalk.
Well, that sounds right, because the oil mill owns a lot of gins, and they had plenty of bagging. So it sounds reasonable enough to me. That'd be the way of it.
Yeah.
No, we talked about Bob Brown a while ago. He was a terrible picture show man. He had the first picture show I could ever remember down on where Alonzo Lindsay is now, called The Happy Hour on 6th Street. And he brought in one of them electric player pianos there one time.
Yeah.
And had it right there in the lobby.
Yeah.
And it had a airplane and an automobile there. And that was so sure enough something. This airplane was flying over it. A one-wing deal. Kind of like the old-time airplane.
Yeah.
Even I know about it because I used to go to the show down there with my aunt. Used to play the piano down there all the time. Way back there then in piano days. But anyhow, Bob Brown then, he had one over there on the south side where Mary Finn is now at one time. And then he went over on the west side and what they call the Topic Theater. And that was
I've got some of his ads in his, and for 1918, I've got some advertisements.
Well, that was really a fancy theater because he had it at the back there where the concrete out, you know.
Now, what building was it in?
Well, where the garment plant is.
Yeah, okay.
At the back, you know, there's concrete slab back at the back now.
Yeah.
Well, he had a stage back there, and he put on a lot of stage shows. And he had electric fans ever so often down each side of the thing, and there wasn't any fans in this country. That was something. And of course, and Red Thompson and Joe Jones used to run the machine for him. They had a little pigeonhole that crawled up a ladder out there in the lobby and got up. It wasn't very fireproof, but anyhow, he was up there. And then he come down here on this lot. It belonged to Shirley and Thomas. This lot right here did.
Right here where we're sitting?
Yeah, I don't know where you remember when Bird Shirley had all that junk here.
Oh, just barely. Hold up just.
Well, Bob Bryant either leased this thing or got a lot of promotion because Mr. Underwood over there, Mr. John Underwood, he promoted Bob Bryant pretty well. I mean, all these dealings, and he built an aerodome here, he called here on this lot.
On this lot? This is directly east of the city hall?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he put a stage over there on the west side there, next to the sidewalk, and all the rest of it was just open with a 1-by-12 fence around it, and seats all around, bleachers all around.
Yeah.
and he had his projection booth in about the middle of it here, where he could screen up on this stage if he didn't have a stage show, and it was open. Air
Open
dome.
air.
Air
dome.
Air dome is what he called it. And it ran here for years, and he put...
Well, what years was that, Mike?
Well,
It's pretty, I ran across one article in the paper about the air dome, and I've got it dated, so I can probably figure that out.
well,
Now, let me ask you another question. On the movies that he had at that time, were these actually movies or were they slides?
no, they were movies.
Kind of, they were jerky type
Oh, yeah,
of the
yeah,
silent
yeah,
movies.
yeah. And you know how that arc light would be on some of them, brighten up, flare.
Well, I never saw one.
Oh, it didn't. Well, that's what they operate on the machine with the arc light deal.
Yeah.
Those
Carbon arc light.
perfect parts. But anyhow, Joe Jones and Red Thompson and some of the old ones around here is always in picture show business while they operated this. And oh yeah, Jewel Vineyard.
Jewel Vineyard.
Yeah, he was the picture show man, main operator here for years. His daddy built the house that Bill Walker lived in downtown, that brick house.
Yeah.
And Jewel finally, Dallas was growing pretty fast, so he went to Dallas and got a job operating a picture machine, filming shows there.
Yeah.
And I don't reckon he ever come back to Honey Grove until he died. But anyhow, they had some sure enough fancy shows down here too.
You mean stage shows?
Yeah, stage shows too, because Bob Brown believed in them. And I don't know what happened, but anyhow, later on, the old thing, the fence and all finally rotted down, and it just disappeared. And Shirley and Thomas, Shirley, well, got all of his backing from the Planter National Bank up here. They got this lot. But before that, on this lot, Mr. Dave Sturman had a big warehouse.
Hardware warehouse.
Yeah, big tin house, because he sat right next to the sidewalk when we was going to school, back this way. Because they shipped those carloads of wagons and cultivators and buggies and everything in the early days, and they had a lot of hay in it one time that burned.
Harry Thompson told me, and when the air dome you were talking about, he called it an opera house.
Well,
Which of course it really wasn't, except he was referring to stage shows and so forth, so I guess that was right, but he didn't tell me it's open air.
well,
He said when it closed down that they moved part of it off to behind where I live, and he said that they left the rest of the building, cut part of it loose, and it was a Justice Peace Court for Sam Gardner for years, and I know there was a small building, JP Court sat there in front. Would that be about right, or according to your recollection?
well, now they always told me they had an opera house over yonder, over where Collins Grocery
That's right.
is at
Harry
one
said they
time.
had 3.
And then I understood Harry always said they had one upstairs over City Hall.
That's what he told me.
But now, when I read that article about this other, my first remembrance of this place here, because Uncle Henry Holmes married my grandmother's sister. And he ran a grist mill in one end of it, and had a Justice Peace at the other end of this building out here.
Yeah.
Because the Justice of Peace used to be one of the best places to go to get some experience in Honey Grove, and had all these cases they tried all the time.
Yeah.
They were something.
And then back in those days, Justice Peace Court, the lawyers appeared and everything.
Oh,
just
yeah,
like
yeah.
a big court.
I always think about the Justice of Peace Court when Wallace Mackey was constable way back yonder. And he kept a 5-gallon keg of whiskey. And they wasn't going to have court several days, or several weeks, over in Squire Gardner's court. And they couldn't figure out what to do, so they decided to bring that keg of whiskey over and put it under Williamson's Palace. You know, there's a big basement back there.
Yeah.
Under that building. And there was an elevator at that time, and kept
back
all
of
the salts and everything down there, vinegar and all. So they put it down there, and my daddy and Mr. B. Evans and Mr. Williamson thought, well, how funny that'd be. So they just drove all that whiskey out in half-gallon jars and left a little in there and finished it full of water. So I heard him talking about it. So the trial is coming up next week, and so when it started, well, of course, then all that crew of Williamson's Palace knew what was going on. They all went over there, and a little old justice office was in that little place in that tin building that Dr. Daniels just had over there. So they sat over there and got that keg of whiskey. They'd done picked the jury, everything, so of course Squire Gardner, he didn't know, he wanted to know, and he reckoned it was whiskey. Well, they poured out some, and he took a big drink of it, and he spit it out. Wallace Mackey, well, he'd try it. So he took a big... He said if that damn guy can't make any better whiskey than that, so I just recommend him send him to penitentiary. Oh, boy. And they never did tell him what they'd done over there at Williamson. Of course, I got they finally figured that out later on.
They didn't send the man up?
No, they just dismissed it. But
who was the fellow, you know?
No, I don't remember who it was, because we had so many bootleggers around here at one time, you know, we couldn't ever tell. But, no, Wallace Mackey, just send him up to penitentiary, because he couldn't beat that. Oh, boy.
Tell me about some of the law enforcement officers we had here.
Well,
when I was a kid, there was Dick Fisher here, and he was seems to have been quite famous lawman or something locally anyway, but I don't really remember anything about him.
Well, he lived right down there in that house on the corner.
Right north of the city hall.
Yeah, before that Miss Taylor and Doc Vaughn built that house. No, he was a fire chief for a long time, and he drove one of the fire wagons. They had a hook and ladder wagon at one time here too, with one horse, and he drove that biggest part of the time. And John P. K. drove that hose wagon. But anyhow, we had moved down on Market Street in 1914 in the summer.
Where'd you live for that?
Right out across the river with Chuck there. First house on Santa Fe. That's where I was born.
Around the bend?
Yeah.
Past the compress?
Yeah,
A tall two-story house?
No, that's my grandfather's house, right west. When my daddy and mother married, well, my grandfather gave them 2 acres there next to Santa Fe track, and our house burned. I mean,
I see. Well, I never knew the house.
But where the house is there now, that's just sealed for it. Married J.D. Moore for it.
That's where you live?
That's where we live.
Okay. Go ahead with your story.
Well, no, the fire alarm come in. I'd always followed the fire wagon around. After we moved to town, well, I did all the time. Whenever they had a fire alarm. One afternoon, well, the McGahees lived down there on South 10th Street, where that old house across from Laundry. The house is rotted down. But anyhow, the McGahees lived there.
Sam McGahee?
Yeah, they're family. The mother and them lived there at one time. And anyhow, fire bell rang. We all, Ned, Joe Jones, and I don't know, Philip Price and Gene Charles and a bunch of them. we all run off up the street there to see where it was, and John P.K. had those, driving the hose wagon, had his two horses to it, and Dick Fisher was fire chief, and he was sitting up there in the seat with John, and they was going down South 6th Street. Well, when they got to the corner there where Smith's feed store is, why, Dick Fisher thought they ought to go down East Market. But he jerked the reins, and up there to this day, why, that's where the horses run in the front of that building, and the tongue hit one of them rock columns there and knocked it off and broke the leg of old Henry, they called him, the old horse that they kept. But it happened to be that it was just a flue burning out like they used to a year ago. That's all there was, the fire was, but...
House didn't burn down then.
Oh, no, but they put old Henry on... Well, the fire department agreed to take care of him as long as he lived. I don't know where you remember the old horse or not.
No.
Well, after they got this motorized truck, why, they had a chain, hitch-rack chain around behind the city hall there.
Yeah.
Where farmers could hitch their horses. Well, John V.K. had a little shed back at the fire station there, and he kept that horse for years and years, and the fire department finally run out of money, and they couldn't furnish the feed, and John took part of his salary and fed that horse. And I stayed around the fire station then all the time, nearly at night, around. So one rainy night, why, John said, well, I better go see about old Henry. And he went out the back, and he's gone. And he said, well, he's got over that chain. Well, we got out, John and I reckon it's Henry Dixon, because he always hung around, hunting him. We got down yonder on the highway, but on the street. Yeah, down there where the park is now, and there was a lot of blood on the highway there. And we traced it on around, and it went on back into this old Kraus and Gin, they call it den, where Mr. Garner went down there. And there he was. Somebody come along there in a cotton trailer and began to pull them trailers with cars or trucks at that time. And they had run a 2x4 plumb through his shoulder and plumb out his side. And he was under that shed down there. And I don't remember who it was, but anyhow, they killed him. Doctor broke old John P.K.'s heart, and all the rest of us go. We thought so much of old Henry, and I don't know what I did with that piece, but it was just a beautiful piece that Mr. Larry had in the Honey Grove paper about old Henry. And we kept it in the book up there, the ledger, all the time, in the park on it. That's finally disappeared. It was half a page he had on one page.
Wasn't no way you could find it.
All about how faithful old Henry had been to the people of the town and what he'd done. And I thought, well, it was just a beautiful piece in memory of a horse. They sold the other two horses in to Virg Shirley. And he didn't treat them right, so John, he just kept feeding them when they were over here in this lot. So Virg sold to somebody else.
Did they still had saloons back when you were a kid, weren't they? When did they vote that out? I forgot.
They told me 1900. I hear some folks say, oh, they had them. Said, you remember? I said, no, old Harry say that to me sometimes.
Yeah.
I said, well, Harry.
Well, he said that to me.
I said, Harry, you know, I don't remember that. He said, oh, you want to? You're around here. I said, yeah, but you're quite a few years older than I am.
He's 90. How old are you now?
72.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be 73 in 2016.
Well, I'm 58. So
yeah.
And that does make it. But when he's talking to me and I'm 58 and he's 90.
Well, we have the same thing down there at Sunday school every Sunday. Old Harry, so you remember so-and-so? I said, no, Harry. I said, the only thing I remember Very well. I said, it's the time you got married. I said, you paid my daddy's expense on the train to be the best man. They went to Gulfport or Rockport, whichever one it was, to get married. And I said, coming back, I've still got some pictures. You wired back to Honey Grove. And I don't know how many, the train had a wreck and how many people was hurt and so on. Harry fell out, went through the window and busted his knee. As well as I remember my daddy said. It was on the Santa Fe over here about Roy City, somewhere along there, Farmersville. Must have been Farmersville. But they got back home all right.
Tell me about old Bob. How many cars did that thing usually have? Just one or two?
It usually had two. Well, it wasn't always a passenger train. It was a passenger and freight too.
Yeah, I knew that.
He had a baggage car and then the passenger coach.
Now, who was the,
Mr. Mike Rowan was depot agent.
alright,
And Stuart Lowen was his assistant.
yeah,
Henry Dixon was the warehouse man down there. The first, I don't remember, Dad Morgan was the engineer. And Walter Chafin, the uncle of mine, was the fireman.
yeah.
And the rest of the crew I don't remember because all of the older bunch on the Santa Fe line, when they found out, see, this was just a 2-hour proposition in Honey Grove. Well, of course, they used to run 2 trains a day. But anyhow, all the older ones, they'd bump somebody off and come to Honey Grove. And we had the highest paid people on the Santa Fe line here in Honey Grove. And they all liked it. But Red Sheffield was a hostler, they called him down here. They're roundhouse man.
Yeah.
And every Sunday the train come in from Ladonia at 12:45. After we had moved up here in town in 1914, then we rented Red and his wife our house out there. And I'd always go up there from church and go down to the depot and wait till the train come in to get a Times Herald. And Red would always say, wait a little bit, and said, when the crew got off, and it was his job to take the engine on up there, we'd turn it around on that turntable. It was easy to do. And then we'd ride down to the house.
On the train to Red Sheffield.
Yeah, on the engine.
Yeah. How did you turn that turntable around?
It is on rollers.
Yeah, but I mean, just manually push it around?
Yeah, it had about a round 6x6 piece of oak or is oak or pine, but on each end of it. But one man get on one end, one on the other.
And just push.
He'd set that thing just exactly right in the center of that thing.
Yeah, where it had a good balance.
It was a good balance and turn it plumb around. Anyhow, old Sheffield said one Sunday, he said, well, the train didn't leave here at 3:45 then after that. And I'd always eat dinner. We always ate down there at Crown Paul McCleary. Come back up there, ride back up to the depot with Red. And he said, I don't like the sound of that whistle. He said, I'm going to fix it. So he run the engine back in the roundhouse and got up there with his wrench and took that whistle off. He kept firing it and fired it. 3 places steam with it. He put it back on, tooted a few times, and he said, I want you to be up here this evening now when Dad Morgan starts off. Oh, Oh boy, when he blowed that whistle, leave that depot down there, he cussed everybody in the connection. He said, Red Sheffield's done something to that whistle that done changed the tune of it. But one of the funniest things I ever saw happen down there was, at that time the TP and the Santa Fe, of course, crossed down there, crossing. And they had a 2x6 with a red lantern out there in the middle of the gate. Or, well, you don't maybe you remember it, but anyhow, they closed it on the, as the train and TP is going east and west, they closed that gate on the Santa Fe.
Yes.
And the Santa Fe was going, they closed it on the TP. But anyhow, 3:45, they took off to Ladonia. It was during the week sometime, and the gate was open on the Santa Fe, but the TP used to have a pretty bad habit about these flying switches, you know, cut that car loose and on it. Well, they cut a box car loose up there about the ice factory at that time, and just as Dad Morgan got his engine on that crossing, that box car hit it and turned that engine over. And boy, howdy. Of course, it was on Dad Morgan's side, the right-hand side, it hit it. Turned it over there. Him and Walter Chapin, they finally crawled out the side of that thing, and Dad Morgan was giving the TP blood still. Well, they had to get a wrecking crew then to come out of the headquarters and pick that engine up. Oh boy. They did a terrific amount of business. Me as well as the other one too, but when they ran those two trains, and I know one year they brought in 45,000 bales of cotton, or that's what they pressed down at this press.
Brought in by train.
Well, that is what is gathered here in town.
Yeah.
But they picked up, the Santa Fe picked all the cotton up from Farmersville and from Roxton back into Honey Grove. They couldn't pass the press some way or another. But, Lord, that old school pasture up around the baseball field and all that other thing, and the cotton yard was covered in cotton.
Harry Thompson told me, I've forgotten what the year was, but said the gin in Honey Grove, 40,000 bales.
Oh my. Well, while we lived out yonder, Ringling Brothers came in. They could come in on the Santa Fe and went out on the TP, and I know we stayed up all night long because the old Santa Fe track wasn't too good anyhow. You could hear them creaking and groaning and going on, and of course they went back out on the TP.
Where'd they set up? The tent?
Up there on the Doolin lot, they called it then. The Doolins owned it, where Mr. Langford, well, the school owns now.
Yeah, where the baseball field, Little League baseball.
Yeah.
Well, I remember one time, was when I was a kid, Ringling Brothers being here. Harry told me a little tale about old man Tank Holt. And he said he, of course, fed a lot of cattle out here on his place on North 14th, or the end of it. And he said he either owned it or a controlling interest or something with the oil mill down here. And of course he run wagons back and forth, meal and hulls to feed his cattle. And Harry said one day they was coming through there and it had been raining just something terrible, and said the wagon just bogged clear down to the hub, and it had two teams of mules on it, and they still stuck and couldn't get out. But said the driver solved the problem. He just walked across over at the circus and got two elephants, and the elephants pulled him out.
Well, I don't know what circus it was put up on that compress lot down there now, that vacant lot across south.
Yeah.
And, of course, we all stayed up all night to see him unload and went to the circus that night. They started loading back, and why they loaded down at the TP depot, I never did know. because they could have loaded down there on the the TP line down there, because they had 3 tracks down there then. They had the main line and 2 more side tracks, because they had lots of business. But anyhow, this pull wagon come along, and all of us boys was following along. Where the ice factor was, the water was always running up and down the ditch. And it had rained that day too. So old boy had 12 horses to this pull wagon. I know we all made the remark just as soon as he got there on the north side of the ice factory, he'd go out of sight. Well, sure enough, he did. He bobbed it plumb on up to the axles, past axle. Well, he was a foreigner of some kind, driving those horses, but he just had the lead lines is all he had. He talked to them and talked to them, and never did raise his voice, but they'd swing that front end of that wagon around and around and around. So he sent back down there to the circus grounds and got 12 more horses. And they had those 24 hooked up there to that thing, and they still couldn't get it out. And
24 horses?
Yeah, And I know this driver, he said, we'll get it out, something like that. So they brought 2 elephants up there, and they carried that wagon right on up to the TP depot. There's 24 horses and 2 elephants. That's how bad it goes. Pavement at all, it's just all.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, a lot of unusual things have happened.
Well, one of the funniest things, my daddy worked for Lawrence Hill for years, off and on. He was in the express business, and all these trains coming in, well, my daddy run the express wagon all the time at night. There'd been a circus, the carnival always set up over on the east side of the square every year. And the old line they had died. So they ordered one from somewhere, and of course the carnival moved on. Well, the line come in by express, because they got horses and everything by express then. Mr. Hill didn't know what to do with that old line. He was in a cave. Over there where Warrior lives now, well, Hill had a express office on one side, and the confectionery, a picture I had and sent in it, confectionery and the ice cream store and all that, and out the back he bought produce, and he had a big chicken pen back there, and they just turned this old line loose out there. He's an old gentle line. Everybody come along, Mr. Hill, I understand you got a line. Of course, they didn't believe it. Yeah, let's go out the back there. They go out the back, open that back door, and there's that line out there, and that pen showed up. And oh, boy. But Mr. Hill had 8 businesses here at one time.
That old man was getting it together, wasn't he?
He sure was. But I know my daddy and Charlie McCleary and Rick McCleary worked for him over there a good many years, and we had a dairy right out here where Miss Llewellyn lives now. And then he had a strawberry patch over across the road there where another fellow lived that run the dairy. And he raised those strawberries to make that strawberry ice cream all the time. So he was really in the business. Oh, boy. No, Stir Ward myself hauled all those bricks when Mr. Hill built that building around yonder by Bobby Lane burnt out.
Yeah.
And then we moved Mr. Hill to Paris. And my daddy ran that garage over there for a long time after that.
That old man not only made it, but he held on to it too, didn't he?
Well, I know when I had an old solid tire Republic truck, that's what he sold Republic trucks. Solid tire, of course everything was solid tires then on trucks. Old rubber tires come a good sprinkle, you couldn't go anywhere. Anyhow, me and Sturward moved into Paris. And I know the last load I made to Paris, he'd bought 3 or 4 houses out there in the east end of Paris at that time and lived back out in there. But anyhow, he owned the building uptown there, and he had a bunch of pan-hard trucks. I never heard of them since, before either, but anyhow, he bought a carload of them, there's 6 of them, and we moved all them to Paris, but he owned the building down on the south side of the square on that main street, the building down on the end of that block, and it had a basement in it, and I slept down there a good many nights, and I'd be over at night, and we put all that junk down in that building. And there's a church out there on, not Clarksville, but is it Lamar Street that goes east, Paris, on the north side of Square?
I forget. Yeah, I think so.
I think it's Lamar. There's a church on out there, a little piece, on up a hill. And they disbanded, and he bought that church. So we cut a great big hole in it had a basement in it, a great big hole there where we get these old junk cars and stuff down that basement, and then we fixed the place in the front of the thing and moved them in there. And several Sunday mornings I was over there, well, he'd say, fire them old cars up. I couldn't understand all of it, but till I did later. It made so much racket out there, them folks bought that building back. And there's still a church there now.